Lesson 3.4, using the quadratic formula. How do you solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula? So you have learned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have learned 5 different ways for solving for a quadratic. When would you use the graphing method? I would only use the graphing method to get an approximate answer unless you're able to use a graphing calculator. The graphing calculator will give you exactly where it crosses the x-axis. But not every problem is graphable, is easy to graph. So the graphing is good usually just for approximates. When would you use the square roots? The only time you're able to use square roots is if it's an x squared problem. If you have both an x squared and an x in the problem, you cannot do the square roots. When would I do factoring? I would do factoring when the problem is actually factorable. Completing the square. I would only do completing the square when a is 1 and this b value is an even number. If a is not 1 and b is not even, the completing the square method is too difficult. I wouldn't do that. I would move on. The quadratic formula. He works for anybody and everybody. So quadratic formula is always my last resort. If it doesn't work with any of the other four methods, always do quadratic formula. So graphing is only good for approximates unless you have a graphing calculator. Square roots only works if you have an x squared. Factoring only works if they're actually factorable. Completing the square only works if a is 1 and b is even. The quadratic formula will work for anything and everything.